Welcome back, everybody, to another installment of the Birds Blast with Kyle Quinn here on the Edge of Philly Sports with your boy Matty B, and my right-hand man Kyle Quinn joins me as he does every week, and he's done it rain or shine or blowout loss or whatever, and I got to give him a lot of credit for that because I know Kyle's been hurting. He says he wasn't, but I know he's been hurting. Kyle, good evening. Welcome back. 42-19, Kyle. We got to get it out of the way because it has to be talked about. How you doing?
Well, I'm good, Mac. The correction, though, I was hurting bad Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. It wasn't until about Thursday where I was like, all right, I mean, it's a regular season loss. You know, the season's not over. They got the best record in the NFL, the number one seed in the NFC still, and everything's right there in front of them. They got their biggest rival. So we discussed whether the Niners were a rival last week. I think that settled itself on the football field with Big Dom and Dre Greenlaw. It looked like a rivalry to me. But we now have our biggest rivalry in the NFL, and that's coming up this week. So we got to wipe the dust off, and we got to get ready to go. It's Cowboys week.
It is Dallas week, and unfortunately, I think Dallas week has gotten lost in all this. You know, has gotten lost in the grieving process and the post-mortem, so if you will, of this game. And we'll try to capture the last fleeting moments of Dallas week, seeing how it's Saturday afternoon. And you're right, Kyle. I think part of the brilliance of being a show that's later in the week versus earlier in the week. I'm sure Monday, if we would have done this as we had been for most of the season, it would have been a different flavor. But we got a little time now separating the loss on Sunday, and time does heal all wounds.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I was in a bad way Monday. I mean, that was about as nightmarish of a loss as you can get, almost like poetically nightmarish in the way that Deebo Samuel was the one that came in, carved us up. I mean, after all the smack talk, they backed it up. Brock Purdy backed it up. It was brutal, and no other way to cut it. I mean, the defense was awful. Jalen Hurts slipping in the red zone, putting up 6 on those first 2 drives was pretty much the nail in the coffin for them. That sucked. The whole thing sucked to watch. So I hope that's as bad as it gets this year.
And with all that being said, Kyle, I'm not going to bore the folks out there. We all know what's happened. We've broken this thing down in nauseum. I'm not going to rehash it or kind of go play by play, but there are a few things in this game before we move on, Kyle, that I got to get your take on, because these are things that I hate to say it, man, I've been talking about all season, and they finally came home, or the Eagles, I guess, came home to roost on Sunday when it comes to these areas. And let's get right to it. You mentioned the 6 points. The offense was moving pretty good. I mean, they came out in this game. I don't think you could have asked for a better start, with the exception, of course, was the red zone effectiveness. It's been a renewed topic. I don't know if it's a topic that's ever gone away, but it's gotten a lot more horses behind it this week. Brian Johnson. Now, you said last week that this is more of an indication of Nick Sirianni than Brian Johnson, specifically for the red zone failures on Sunday. The Eagles had a golden opportunity. They did not capitalize. I think that would have changed the outcome of this game if they would have scored 2 touchdowns versus 2 field goals. But then things happened the way they did. But, the post-mortem of Brian Johnson has been criticism like I've never seen, rightfully so, maybe. But I have not heard much about Nick Sirianni being criticized this week, Kyle. Maybe I'm not listening to the right channels. I mean, I do listen, but I haven't heard enough, as I think, enough criticism of Nick Sirianni. Where do you come out on that?
Well, so at least when it comes to this week, I don't think Brian Johnson really deserves the bulk of the blame. I will definitely give Nick Sirianni some of the blame just for the way the team came out. It seems like they kind of let the hype of the week get to them. I might have to put that on Nick Sirianni. But when you talk about the 6 points that they came away with in those 2 drives in the red zone, that's purely on the quarterback. I mean, the guy was sitting in the pocket for about 10 seconds on each play. The offensive line was Lane Johnson had Nick Bosa eating dirt like he did in the NFC Championship game. The offensive line was doing its job. Jalen Hurts is, as they say, burping the baby in the pocket for 10 seconds and not throwing the football, and then he slips, and then we end up, being 20 yards behind the sticks and having to kick a field goal. That I put on Jalen Hurts. He's been way too hesitant. I think he's been pretty hesitant all season, and that's been sort of leading to some of the slow starts for the Eagles offense. Not to, a ridiculous degree. I think that's probably the one knock I'd have to give him, though.
Okay. I mean, listen, I did hear somebody equate, there were moments in that game on Sunday where Jalen Hurts was in the pocket unmolested so long he could have made a ham sandwich. And I did hear that, and there's maybe some truth to that. But Kyle, when it comes to the offensive overall game plan, regardless of this, when this game got away from them, when he got away from them, it got away from them. But prior to that, it was very pedestrian. It was very one-dimensional. I'm not going to go. I mean, I guess I got to go with the run game situation. Once again, Jalen Hurts led the way in carries with 7. DeAndre Swift with 6. Again, a very close comparison. I got it. The game got away from them, and they went pass heavy. But Marcus Mariota, who played a series and a half of this game, got 2 carries, and that puts him up there as one of the leaders of the game. Kyle, what is it, 13 or 16 carries, 17 carries, or 17 attempts? It's not going to do it, Kyle. It's too one-dimensional. Do you agree or disagree?
Oh, well, I definitely agree that last week was way too one-dimensional. I think if I do have a knock on the play calling, Lane Johnson actually said this, and I don't know if he meant this as a shot at the play calling, the coaching, whatever. But he said that they have a tendency sometimes to where if things aren't working in the beginning of the game, they completely get away from them. And that's exactly what happened. I mean, I know they were maybe averaging 2 yards clip on the ground, handing it off to DeAndre Swift. But, and the game did not dictate them to do this. But I think sometimes you do have to be able to commit to running the football. Now, if they were able to capitalize on those red zone drives and they were able to play with the lead, they probably would have committed a little bit more to the run. But I definitely agree with you. Well, first of all, the Marcus Mariota thing, the reason he got 2 carries is because you don't want that guy throwing the football. God forbid. That has to happen. That's why he gave Marcus Mariota a couple carries. Jalen Hurts, though, I mean, I don't think you should be in a game where you give the running back 6 carries and the quarterback 7 carries. So this week, I'll definitely have to agree with you. The run game was non-existent, and the offense was way too one-dimensional.
It was receiving wise. I mean, AJ Brown had a very quiet 8 receptions for 114 yards. Devontae Smith 9 receptions, 96 yards. I mean, they got theirs. I guess they were the only bright spots on the offense. Jalen Hurts on the day. I'm not going to say his worst ever, but 26 for 45, 298 yards, averaged about 6.5 or 6.6 yards to throw, a touchdown. He was sacked 3 times. No interceptions or fumbles this week by Jalen Hurts. But all in all, Kyle Quinn, one of the worst offensive outputs or offensive performances that I've ever seen from I have seen from this team. I got to go back to that Tampa wildcard game. It was kind of on those lines for me. Would you not agree?
No, I mean, I would definitely agree. But, I mean, we can't let this get lost in this, is that the 49ers are really, really good. I mean, for the fact that they took it to the other 2 top teams in the NFC, you could definitely make the argument, not record-wise, but you could definitely make the argument that they are the best team in the NFL. So, while I'm not excusing the performance, because I definitely think the Eagles should be able to stack up with a team like that, given that they're 10-2 and the talent that they have. But sometimes you do have to give a little bit of credit to the other side of the football, and they did a really, really good job with stopping us. I think not dominant like Nick Bosa made it seem, but I think they did a pretty good job.
Now, I'm not going to let things go without, of course, talking about the defense. That's been the story all week, and the way the defense kind of just came up real small in the biggest of stages, and I'm not going to pin it all on the defense because you can't do that. But Kyle Quinn, a tackling clinic they did not put on Sunday against the 49ers. San Francisco, I noticed on one of their first drives, decided to try to exploit the top of the field, try to take the top off the field. It wasn't working. So they went to the attack that I think everybody in the free world thought they were going to do, was exploit the middle of that field. And boy, Kyle, did they ever exploit the middle of the field. Between the bad tackling and just the poor linebacker play, the safety issues, George Kittle and Christian McCaffrey, who we talked about, had a field day. I mean, they were exactly what they were billed to be in this game for the San Francisco 49ers. We saw it. How come Sean Desai and the Eagle defense didn't see it coming?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't say they didn't see it coming. Our linebackers were Nick Moreau and Christian Ellis. The Niners' game plan in that game was going to be 100% get their playmakers out in space and make those guys, not only those guys, but the corners too, have to tackle you. I mean, we saw Ringo or Rex bounce off of Brock Purdy. I mean, that stuff was embarrassing out there, the tackling. It really was. So I do think some of it had a little bit to do with the fact that they were gassed. I think you saw in those first couple of drives, they were really getting after the offensive line, dominating the line of scrimmage, and even getting after Brock Purdy. I mean, Hassan Reddick was a force, but as the game went on, you could start to see the buildup of having to play those 3 games, 13 days, and the Niners being a little bit more rested than them. They just outlasted us. I think by those second drive or that third consecutive touchdown drive the Niners had, our defense was like, well, forget this, I'm ready to go home. And as Darius Slay so eloquently stated on his podcast today, in response to quote unquote a guy Seth Joyner that he wants to have his teeth still and not be in concussion protocol. Well, guess what, Slay? I hope you're ready to tackle this week.
With that being said, watch this.
Played a very, very solid game. Had a great tackling. I was tackling very, very well. A guy named Seth Joyner sitting saying that we don't want to tackle. I don't know what kind of tackle he talking about because I think I led the team in tackles at that as well. Now, I don't know what kind of tackle he wants you to do. You know what I'm saying? Getting the guy on the ground is getting the guy on the ground. I think Seth played maybe linebacker or something. And I think Buddy just wants you to try to knock folks out. Well, I'm only 190 pounds. Ain't too many people I could just knock out. And then there's safety rules, it's caution to this. And I don't think back then they taught them properly how to tackle because they used to tackle with their head down. I don't tackle with my head down, so I try to keep my head up. I want to be able to talk to my kids. I want to have teeth in my mouth. I don't want to have them keep getting knocked out or whatever. I don't want to be in concussion protocol because I'm going to miss the game. But I do lay my body on the line for my team each and every week. So, yeah. I don't know what Seth Joyner be coming with all that scary stuff. But, nobody never been scared to tackle nobody. But but I think I led the team in tackles. So I think I tackled pretty well. Of course I always can do better. But overall.
All right, Kyle. If old Matty B was the head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles, I would be fuming right now. All right. He's not having a good year. He can talk all he wants about leading the league in tackles or leading the game in tackles. He's not having a good year. And then to go after a linebacker who played 75 million years ago for criticizing him, I would be fuming, Kyle, if I was the head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah, I mean, that stuff pisses me off, and it's par for the course with Darius Slay. It's not the first time that he's done this or, sort of pseudo threw his teammates under the bus. I don't know if he knows this, but it's not good for a cornerback to lead the team in tackles because if you're allowing 20 yards in front of you, then good job having to tackle him, but you let up the completion, you let up the yardage, Slay. So that's not anything to be proud of necessarily. But this isn't the first time that Slay's done this. So last year they let up the 3rd and 30 in Dallas. Who does he throw under the bus? Josiah Scott, an undrafted free agent rookie, by the way, not taking ownership. The Super Bowl, lights, camera, action. We allowed 180 yards to Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl. Guess what, dude? The ball didn't hit the ground in the 4th quarter in that Super Bowl. So, honestly, I don't know why he has the C on his chest because he's not a captain. He's not really having a very great year by Darius Slay standards. And I think it's ridiculous that he has the nerve to say a guy named Seth Joyner. If you ever put on the tape of Seth Joyner, the last thing you want to get into an argument with Seth Joyner about is tackling in particular. So, I hate that kind of stuff from Darius Slay. I think if there's anything he needs to do is he needs to sort of read the room with the fan base, especially after a loss like that when you get when you lose by 23 points. You need to shut your mouth. And I think you just need to sort of let that stuff go because Seth Joyner's paid to talk about what he sees as a former NFL player. And I think Darius Slay just sort of needs to get ready for the. I don't know when he recorded that, but I think he needs to stop focusing on what somebody said about the most recent game against the 49ers. Get ready to play the freaking Cowboys.
And let's talk a little bit about Deebo Samuel and the other and the San Francisco 49er offense. Then I want to comment a little bit on the Nick Sirianni thing that I just mentioned because there's a couple other issues that I'm having right now with this championship DNA that he's got going on here. But Deebo Samuel had 4 receptions. If you zip me back from outer space and showed me the box score and said Deebo Samuel had 4 receptions, yeah, baby, we put him out of the game. He was not a factor. But those 4 receptions resulted in 116 yards and 2 touchdowns. And seemingly all night long, he was streaking down the sidelines or streaking down the center of Lincoln Financial Field, unmolested and untouched. Deebo Samuel, not the world beater that I've ever thought him to be, but you're right, Kyle. He took that motivation the right way, and he came back and he had an outstanding game. What was your opinion on Deebo's performance against the Eagles secondary on Sunday?
Yeah, well, he was a bad matchup for the Eagles defense, just like Christian McCaffrey was, just like George Kittle was. I mean, the Niners basically are a built-in bad matchup for the Eagles defense. And when you have Nick Moreau and Christian Ellis out there and you're not tackling, that's pretty much the result that you should expect. So,
and Christian McCaffrey, as we mentioned, when he's healthy, and I know that's a problem, and I know that's an issue that you can count on, but when he's healthy, he's definitely a game changer. 17 carries, 93 yards, averaged about 5.5 yards a touch. He had a touchdown. Receiving wise, 3 receptions for 40 yards. Just a matchup nightmare, as you mentioned, and he's all over the goddamn field. Eagles had no answers for Christian McCaffrey on this day. I don't think they're going to have any answers for him if they ever see him again in the playoffs. We had a chance, Kyle Quinn, to get our hands on Christian McCaffrey last year at the trade deadline. I believe you were against it because of all the maybe less tread on the tires that he has, and he is off injured. But Christian McCaffrey is a game changer when healthy.
Yeah, of course he is. And he's been healthy pretty much since the 49ers traded for him. I think he was banged up with an oblique injury earlier this season, but I'm not sure he missed much time, if any. Yeah, I mean, he's without a doubt the best running back in football right now. Complete game changer, and he's the MVP of the 49ers.
And George Kittle had his thing as well. Once again, just a complete matchup problem against the Eagle linebackers. You mentioned Christian Ellis of now the New England Patriots, as Ellis was released by the Eagles and did not clear waivers. I don't know if that was a move. Let's talk about that real quick, and then let's run down the stats of this game and move on. Christian Ellis was released seemingly to make room for Shaq Leonard. I don't know if that was the reason. I don't know if the Eagles really thought he was going to pass through waivers. Apparently 6 teams put a claim in on him, and he ended up signing with the Patriots today. I'm not necessarily upset about it. I mean, he's not to me, but, what was this? Why do you think this was done? Was it just really let's get rid of Christian Ellis, or was there some sort of magical plan by Howie to hopefully retain him and put him back on the practice squad?
That was, yeah. So it was an attempt to get him back on the practice squad. Sirianni himself said that they didn't. They were hoping that they would be able to get Christian Ellis back on the practice squad. I mean, yeah, it's not a huge loss because he's not a starter, shouldn't be a starter, but he's a pretty good special teamer. So I do see why the Eagles wanted to get him back on the squad. But I will say I do feel a lot better about Zach Cunningham and Shaq Leonard being out there this week than the combination of Morrow and Christian Ellis last week.
And then, of course, Shaq Leonard, who I guess surprisingly is the word I'm going to use, Monday decided on in the aftermath of all this to make his choice to be the Philadelphia Eagles that he was going to sign a 1-year contract with. Of course, there was a big conversation that he was going to be an Eagle or a Cowboy at some point this week. Anyway, the arrival of Shaq Leonard, it's not going to save the day. He's not the Shaq Leonard that he used to be. I think he's a pretty good player. He's a hell of a better talent than we have in the linebacker court all right now. Shaq Leonard, a no-brainer here for you, Kyle?
Yeah, I mean, he's a guy you take a flyer on anytime you can. I mean, especially if you have the need at linebacker that the Eagles do. It's funny because I was thinking that he might go into this week saying, what team's better? What team do I have a better chance of getting a ring? I mean, that clearly wouldn't have, I don't think he would have signed here if that's what he was looking at. I think he was honestly probably looking at the fact that, oh, wow, I'm going to get a lot of playing time there in Philly. Look at those freaking trash linebackers on the field. So I think it had a little bit something to do with that, his relationship with Nick Sirianni, and, of course, I guess the desire to compete on a team that has a chance to win a Super Bowl. Kind
of an audition for next season, huh? I agree with that. All right. On the day, let's run through the stats real quick. There's nothing really much to get excited about here. Eagles have only had 6 first-half points, 151 now for the season. They're averaging about 12.6, 13 second-half points, 185 on the season, 15 and a half on the season as well for the average. Eagles committed 7 penalties on this day for 47 yards. We're going to get into some of the more undisciplined penalties here in a moment. I know you can't call a penalty on your head of security, but whatever. Now they have 64 penalties for 528 yards. And they did not force any turnovers, but they did not commit any turnovers, which is a positive thing, I guess. But we're still labored down around 16 turnovers forced per game, which has now dropped below 1.5 on the season for the average. They allowed Jalen Hurts to get sacked 3 times, and they were able to get to Brock Purdy twice. Red zone effectiveness 2 for 4, breaking that 12 for 12 streak they had going. Now 61.7% on the season in the red zone. Kyle, we mentioned the Darius Slay thing. We mentioned the team that came out seemingly unprepared to play the biggest game. Maybe it wasn't the biggest. Maybe they didn't circle on their calendar, but seemingly a big game for a lot of reasons for the Eagles to win. They were completely unprepared for it. Then you factor in the Greenlaw incident on the sideline with Big Dom, who I think should be fired for it, to be honest with you. I should think he should be fired right now. You're not a player, you're not a coach. It's not your place to do that. You're a non-combatant. You should stay out of it. And he got involved in it. I think they should fire him. I really do. But Kyle, what is this culture of winning, this winning culture, this championship DNA that everybody talks about? What is this? Because I'm not seeing that with Nick Sirianni right now. I'm seeing a guy that looks like he doesn't have any control over his team right now.
Well, I don't know if that's fair. I mean, they literally only just lost one game. I mean, they were 10-1 before this, and all everyone talked about was the fact that all the Eagles do is win. I know that it was really tough to watch, and it was a nightmare, and it was brutal, and they kicked our ass. And I'll tell you what, the one thing that does stand out to me about those numbers you read is the fact that we didn't turn the ball over and still got our asses handed to us. That's not good, but I'm not sure it has anything to do with not a winning culture. I think, look, the tough schedule, the gauntlet, the 3 games in 13 days, and playing a really, really good team, it just finally caught up to them, Matt. I mean, like that's sometimes what you just have to deal with. You're not going to be able to go out there and win every game. I know it seemed like they might because they were 10-1 and just winning at a ridiculous clip in ridiculous fashion. But it was going to be a tough game, and they were going to drop one eventually. And I don't think panicking and acting like all of a sudden everything's a meltdown and the winning culture is gone is an appropriate reaction. Now, if they get boat raced in Dallas and they don't respond to that ass kicking that they got against San Francisco, then Matt, next week I'm going to come on here ringing the alarm. So
I agree with your points, Kyle, but I disagree with your main thing. I've always been critical of this team. I'm not going to say that I sat here and was like, yeah, they're always winning and everything will be great. I've been very critical of this team, maybe over so much, maybe caricature like, but I've been critical of this team. And on one final point about this game, and we'll move on. At the end, towards the end, when DeAndre Swift got his soul knocked out of him in one of the most prettiest, most textbook hits. Maybe Darius Slay needs to look at this. Maybe that's what he means by not putting your head down. I don't know, but it was a gorgeous hit. Right out there on the flat, knocked him out, knocked him down, knocked the wind out of him, hurt him. I don't know if you noticed this, but A.J. Brown at that point, now granted, this was the point where the starters were still in, which we can make a discussion about that. Why were they still in this game at this point? You know, you had Jalen Hurts leaving for concussion protocol and then reinserted into the game. Doesn't make any sense to me. Again, this goes along with the winning culture, and maybe Nick Sirianni doesn't know what he's doing. And then you got DeAndre Swift getting laid out there at the end of the game. But at that point, A.J. Brown then removed himself from the game. I watched this over. His body language as he's looking at his injured teammate, didn't check on his injured teammate. He's walked himself off the field and said, you know what, I'm done. Again, Kyle Quinn, I want to go back to that question of winning culture. That is not winning culture. That is not being there for your brother. That is being there for yourself. And I'm concerned that is what the real attitude of this team is.
No, I think that's the real attitude of A.J. Brown. I think that's the real attitude of Darius Slay. But the real leaders on this team are the Jason Kelce's, the Brandon Grahams, the Fletcher Cox. They have a very, very strong leadership foundation. I do think it's a winning culture because it starts with those guys, not necessarily Nick Sirianni, but the fact that those guys echo Nick Sirianni's messages to the rest of the team. So I think it's just a little bit early to start talking about, the non-winning culture. Let's see how they respond this week. If they don't respond, then we can start talking about a non-winning culture. But a big response this week in Dallas, you'll be eating some crow.
And that's exactly what it comes down to, because I said it on the Eagle postgame show here on the Edge Philly Sports that I was not happy about this, and that I thought that actually it was a good thing because the season then starts today, Monday or Sunday. Now we get to see what this team's really about. Now we get to see what this team's championship DNA is all about. You got punched in the mouth. Now you're going to get back up off the canvas, or you're going to completely whine and bitch and moan about it. And that starts right now. Kyle Quinn, Dallas Week is in our midst, part 2, 2023. We are headed to Arlington. We are headed to AT&T Stadium, where the Cowboys are 14-0 in their last 14 home games. Streaks are made to be broken. I got that. This game got a lot more interesting with the results of Sunday. There's some medium smack talk going on. Again, there was more going on with this 49er game than I've seen or heard about going on about this Cowboy game, and I don't know if it's timing or what. But Kyle, real quick overview. I'm not going to get into your summary. I just want to ask this. With the way we beat the Cowboys earlier this season, which was lucky. I mean, Dak Prescott, all he had to do was dive, and maybe the game is different. He steps out of bounds, whatever. How you feeling about this game?
I feel fine, honestly. All this stuff, Matt, I don't know if you're aware of this, but it's December now.
Yes.
Do you know what typically happens to the Dallas Cowboys when the calendar turns to December?
Yeah. Yeah, wilt underneath the Texas sun. I get it. Yep. I get it.
So I'm just going to lean on what I know about both of these teams, and that the Eagles step up in big moments and that Dallas folds in big moments. So yeah, I feel really good about going into this game. I do agree with you that it's good that they almost got punched in the mouth. That way they can have honest conversations about the things that are wrong in the film, and they can chew each other out, and they can, they can actually work, like, it's real now, right? Like you said, the season starts now. Like they actually, the pressure's on, the heat is on. So but I actually feel really good about the way that I think this team, I think Jalen Hurts, I think all of them are going to respond in a big way versus the Cowboys. I think we're going to see a really, really tough game. The Cowboys, like you mentioned, are a juggernaut at home. But I do think we're going to see that response out of the Eagles.
And it's going to be the first of 3 straight night games. Woohoo! Just love that, man. No sleep a coming. Down there on Sunday night, AT&T Stadium. Whether I'm not even going to talk about it is a mute factor. They got the retractable roof down there, if you didn't know. The Cowboys going with their all whites to include the white helmet. The Eagles are going with their midnight green tops and their white bottoms. Injury report, Kyle. Nobody is listed on the injury report except those who, of course, are on injured reserve for both teams. And that means Dallas Goedert, Zach Cunningham, everyone's going to be back for this game. Let's talk about the Eagles injury report situation. A lot of talk this week was, we got to get Dallas Goedert back, and he's going to definitely change things. No Zach Ertz signing right now. Zach Ertz is still out there on the street as far as I know. I know he's not an Eagle. How much do you really think Dallas Goedert is going to impact this game on week 1 coming back from surgery on his forearm?
I think he should have a big impact. And it's not really because of him. It's because Jalen Hurts trusts him. And a lot of the hesitancy that I mentioned earlier in the show about Jalen Hurts not pulling the trigger when he's in the red zone, sitting back there for 10 seconds. You are seeing guys, Jack Stoll, Alberto, get open. Hurts doesn't trust them as far as he can throw them. Nope. He trusts Dallas Goedert in a big, big way. And I'll also throw this in, because we noticed the same trend last season, and it trickled into this year, and now you can definitely call it a pattern. When Dallas Goedert's out, Devontae Smith's numbers spike. AJ's don't. When Dallas Goedert's in, Devontae's numbers, they're pretty much average, but AJ Brown goes off, and that's because teams have to respect Dallas Goedert underneath. They can't cover both AJ Brown and Devontae Smith. The best version of Seagulls offense, and I'm not breaking any news here, is when Dallas Goedert's in there with A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. So I think in a big way, we're going to see the offense come out looking pretty hot this week against Dallas. And
in Dallas is the same situation with the Cowboys. Nobody is listed on their injury report other than those who were out. So this is going to be 2 teams that are the best versions of themselves that they can possibly be at this stage of the season, going head-to-head with a lot on stake for both teams. A win by the Eagles, say goodnight to the NFC East. The Eagles will win it. Say goodnight pretty much to the NFC. I think the Eagles will lock down the conference with this win, or they would definitely put themselves in a better position. A loss by the Eagles totally changes everything, and the landscape will flip. The Eagles could find themselves in third position, or even fifth or fourth by the end of the weekend if things fifth. Yeah, if things break wrong for the Eagles, they can go from 1 to 5 in a matter of a couple hours. With all that being said, Kyle Quinn, what is going to happen on Sunday Night Football?
Well, I think the Eagles are going to – I think it's going to be another heart attack game, just like the one we had last time played the Dallas Cowboys. But I think the Eagles are ready to respond, and I think the offense is going to come out hot. I think the defense is going to be a little bit better with Zach Cunningham and Shaq Leonard back there. And I think the Eagles are going to play more with whenever you have fans with run the ball signs outside the NovaCare complex. You know what Nick Sirianni does, Matt? He starts running the freaking football. And I think if this Eagles team can run the ball, then we're going to really be able to limit Dallas's possessions and stop them from being that 40-point-per-game scoring team that they are at home. And I think we're going to be able to come out with a really close, hard-fought win.
As Nick Sirianni debuted the run the ball, baby, run shirt yet this week? Because I haven't seen that.
Not yet. No, we still have Saturday.
Okay, yeah. No, we don't. We haven't Saturday. Yeah, all right, Kyle. What are your 3 keys to Eagles victory?
Yeah, well, the first one, and I know you're going to love it, Matt. Just like those guys said, that's sign outside the NovaCare. Run the freaking ball this week, dude. You got to run the freaking football this week. I like the number one thing that they need to do is limit the number of possessions that Dallas has against this Eagles defense. That what we saw what Dak and CeeDee Lamb did to it the last time they played us. We saw what the Niners just did to us over the middle the week before. We need to limit that from happening as much as we possibly can. Dallas scores 41 points per game at home, which is just an absolutely ridiculous number this season. So I think if we're able to keep them maybe in the low 30s or, this would be amazing, Hail Mary, but even the 20s, then I think we could definitely come away with a win here. And the only way we're going to be able to do that is by running the ball often and effectively. And then number 2, Jalen Hurts needs to be decisive. He was not decisive at all last week, and that cost him in the red zone, slipping, getting sacked against the 49ers, and just frankly having a really bad day all around. I think it's hurt him a lot in the first halves of some of these games, but I think Dallas Goedert coming back is going to play a huge part in helping him be more decisive, and I think he's going to be able to get more, open shots to A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and even Goddard too. So I think we're just going to see a much better version of the Seagulls offense that run the ball, and if Hurts is a little bit more decisive. And the last thing, Matt, I'm going to have to make a request that the Eagles do something that I'm pretty sure, if I'm not mistaken, they haven't done a single time this entire season, and that is get a sack on third down. Can they please, for God's sakes, get a sack on third down and get off the field? I mean, they get so many third downs. I think Buffalo had 22 third downs in the game against us, which is a ridiculous amount. And they were converting so many of them. I mean, do wonders for this defense if they could just get a freaking sack on third down. So if they're able to do those things on offense and get themselves off the field on defense, and I think they'll be able to come out of this one.
Yeah, everyone looks for that big strip sack or interception to turn the game around. It doesn't have to be that. It can be just something as a quarterback sack on third down that can really flip the field easy. I agree with you, Kyle, and we haven't seen much of that, which leads me to my 3 keys to Eagle victory. My number 3, once again, play 4 quarters of competitive football. I haven't seen that in weeks, months, years. Well, not years, but I need 4 quarters of competitive football. We need to go out there and we need to play like we are the number 1 seed in the NFC. We are the number 1 seed in the end, or we are the NFC East pending champions. We've allowed Dallas to kind of now get some false hope. We've allowed Dallas now to kind of get a little bit of hype with their situation. We got to put a stop to that. And what better way to do it is head-to-head this week. So give me 4 competitive quarters. And number 2, do not let the hype overtake you like they did against the 49ers. The 49ers came out hungry. They came out ready to win. They came out ready to play, but they didn't come out ready to cheat or no, they wanted to play aggressively, but within the rules. The Eagles were totally not prepared for that. They let that hype get them emotional. They made emotional penalties. They got away from the game. Shanahan did a masterful job of getting his team ready in that aspect. Nick Sirianni needs to do the same thing for his group this week. They're feeling hurt. They feel what they feel. That's great. Use that, but use it within the rules and the confines of the game and go out there and play the game hard and tough and win. Not baby and dirty. And my number 1 key to Eagles victory. Listen, Kyle, Shaq Leonard is going to help, but there is no magical recipe. This team has flaws on defense. It has flaws on offense, but it has enough overall talent to win the day. And we've seen it over and over all season long. Let that talent rise above. Let the playmakers make friggin' plays. Put the ball in the hands of those playmakers any possible way you can. And you're going to be very surprised at the results.
Yeah, and I mean, to sort of go off that, Dallas, the one thing the Eagles have going for them is that Dallas isn't as talented as the 49ers are on offense. I mean, Tony Pollard's not Christian McCaffrey by any stretch. They have CeeDee Lamb, who can kill you, but they don't have all the weapons that the 49ers do. And Mike McCarthy's a bozo. So, and Kyle Shanahan did a really good job scheming up the offense, but Mike McCarthy, I was hoping that he'd be able to be on the sideline when he got the appendix surgery this week because he's an idiot. So he tried to give that game away against Seattle like 3-4 times Thursday night last week. So I'm feeling pretty good about having to go up against Mike McCarthy this week.
Now, before we go to prediction and score, let's remind the folks at home how we're doing here. Of course, I had the 49ers last week. Kyle had the Eagles. I am now 8-4. Kyle was 9-3. His MVP was Jalen Hurts. That didn't work out. My MVP was Nick Bosa. That really didn't work out thanks to Lane Johnson. I think I maybe hands down. I don't know if it's a hands down thing, but I'm going to go with Debo. Even though he only had 4 receptions, he definitely made his presence felt in that game. Big time for the 49ers. You can maybe go McCaffrey too, but I'm going to head with Debo Samuel as my MVP for last week's game. But let's move on. Kyle, prediction, score, and your MVP.
All right. I'm not going to say this one goes to overtime, but I think this is going to be a really, really close game. And I think the Eagles might have to kick a field goal to win it at the very end. I'm going to go 33-31 Philadelphia Eagles. And why not? Jalen Hurts, huge bounce back game. Jalen Hurts going to be the MVP.
Yeah. Actually, Kyle, I'm back on the winning side this week. Again, I've made it known that I'll never pick the Cowboys to beat
Yep.
anybody, especially the Eagles. So I'm going to go Eagles 31-24, and I as well have Jalen Hurts as my MVP. So we're in lockstep for that this week, Kyle Quinn.
That's good, Matt. I'm glad to see you so cheery and positive on the Eagles this week.
Well, wait until you see why you spinning it that way. I'm not sure.
You're predicting to win, dude. You think they're gonna win?
I am, but everyone's giving me a bunch of stuff all week about how this has somehow made me happy. It hasn't. But you know what? As I said, I wish this would have happened. I wish this kind of attention and this kind of angst would have been placed when we lost to the Jets back there in week 5. We could have used that Jet game as potentially what we're going to use the 49er game for. And I would have felt a lot better in week 5 going through that than week 12. So whatever, but it's here. It happened. Now it's time to put up or shut up. Let's go. The season begins today.
Let's do it, man. Let's get back on the winning side. Me and you, buddy. We're
well, I don't think I am going against the Eagles the rest of the season. I think I got the Birds rested away, but
good.
Yeah,
that's good.
All right,
man.
Kyle. It is time for the question of the week, but we're going to flip it around, Kyle, because I think I'm going to hand this segment to you for your question or comment or scenario of the week.
Okay, so Matt, I wanted to throw something at you. Basically, what I'm just going to ask you is if you agree with this take that I'm about to present you here, because I was thinking about this because we were talking a little bit about how we could end the weekend in the 5 seed. I think there's a likely scenario that at the end of the season, if we don't get the 1 seed and we still get the win the division, we'll be in the 2 seed. I think, Matt, that not only would it be not that bad if the Eagles didn't get the number 1 seed, I think it would be better for the Eagles if they ended up as the 2 seed in the NFL playoffs. And here's why. Because the advantages of having the 1 seed are you get a bye, like a week off, and then you get home field advantage. So if the scenario works out the way that you would hope it does, the Eagles should be able to rest their starters in week 18 versus the Giants. There's your week off. Then you go into the wild card round, and since you're the 2 seed, you play a tomato can 7 seed, which is going to be, the Vikings, the Rams, if they sneak in, one of those garbage teams. In the second round, you'll get Detroit, barring any upset from the 6th seed, and Dallas will have to play the San Francisco 49ers. Now, in the end of the day, one of those 2 teams is getting eliminated, and then in the conference championship, you might have to go to San Francisco. Or if the Cowboys win, you have the NFC championship game at home. So you have had home field advantage throughout the playoffs, and you had a bye week, and the only extra game you had to play is against the trash 7 seed. What do you think?
Well, right now, if the playoffs were to end today, Green Bay would be that trash 7 seed. But that absolutely doesn't scare me at all. Mm-hmm. You're right. I don't know. So listen, I get what you're saying, but I guess it really comes down to my belief or how much I believe in home field advantage as the X factor in the NFL playoffs, regardless of who we play. Because there is something to that, Kyle. There is. I like it, but there's a lot of chance there. There's a lot of what ifs and all that.
Yep. There's a lot of things that have to sort of break your way. But I'll say this, and I'll throw this in as the last part of it, because the difference between the home field advantage and the conference championship probably pretty big, right? Having to go to San Francisco versus whatever. But here's what I'll say. I think the difference between the Eagles' chances of beating Dallas is much greater when we play at home versus in Dallas, as opposed to the Niners could beat us either here or in San Francisco. So, it breaks out that way. You might be looking at a home championship game in a game that you really have a really good shot at winning. Advances.
So setting up the math like that and putting yourself in a potential position like that obviously would be what you'd want. But you're right. There is something to that. There's a lot of validity to that, Kyle. It wouldn't be the end of the world finishing as a number 2. It wouldn't be. And I'd be okay with it. I guess sort of what we're trying to think. I mean, is it pretty? I mean, what do you think? It's going to come down to the 3 of them, right? It's the Eagles, 49ers, and Cowboys are going to be at the end of the day battling it out for the NFC Championship.
Yes.
And if that is the way it needs to be, then you got to try to set yourself up the best way you can. And why not have 2 of them duke it out and one of them gets eliminated and that keeps you safe for another week? Yeah, I'd be okay with that, Kyle. I would.
Yeah, and I mean, I invite the wild card team, and I invite the Lions or whoever having to come to Philadelphia in round 2, and I mean, then you're sitting there with the championship game, and if you have to go to San Francisco, I mean, hell, you got one game you got to win to go win the Super Bowl. You're gonna have to get through them anyway, and then if you got a home game against Dallas, then that's even better.
Yeah. No, Kyle, I like that. I do. But ultimately, at the end of the day, of course, we're looking for that number 1 overall seed, which is what you got to set up for contingencies. But you're right.
That's right.
All right, Kyle. Real quick before we do go, you mentioned the playoffs, so let's take a look at the NFL right now. We're at that potential point of the season. Some of the as if the season were to end right now, this is how things would stack up. The Eagles, of course, would be the number 1 seed. 49ers 2, Lions 3, the Falcons 4 in that vaunted NFC South. They're coming out, man. They're a caged animal. You got to watch out for the Atlanta Falcons, and then Dallas, Minnesota, and Green Bay would be your wild cards 5, 6, and 7 like that. Kyle, there's no way of getting around the fact that the NFC South must put a champion in, and there's no way of getting around that. But would you be pretty pissed off? I mean, if you're like, say, I don't know, let's call it the Chicago Bears of the world. You're gonna, the Falcons ain't. Where are the Falcons? They're running the same type of team we are, and we're not getting in. They're going in as a division champion with a home playoff game. I mean, I know it's not. You can't ever ask for it to be fair across the board, but is it a wasted playoff spot on the NFC South this year?
No, I mean, look, we go through this a lot when a crappy team wins a crappy division. I think, look, well, first of all, the Bears are a terrible example because the Bears are horrible and they're not over for a playoff spot. But the solution to that, Matt, is to win your own division. I mean, it's right there for you. The rules are pretty simple. If you win your division, you're getting a playoff spot. So go win your division. Quit crying. I mean, all this stuff. I always go back to when the Eagles threw that last game against Washington for that higher draft pick, and the Giants, who were 6-10, were crying about the fact that we threw it and we didn't let them into the playoffs. Dude, you're 6-10. Win more football games, man. Win your division.
Yeah, now that team, I guess Chicago was the wrong. It would actually be Seattle to be on the outside looking in if that happens. So there's something to that. And then the AFC, real quick, a little bit more of a clearer picture, but an interesting picture. Currently, the number 1 seed is the Miami Dolphins. 2 is Baltimore. 3 is Kansas City. 4 is Jacksonville, who suffered a humongous setback. 5 is Cleveland. 6, Indianapolis. Shane Steichen in the playoffs right now in his first year. 7, Houston. Your 2 bubble teams really are your 3 bubble teams that are kind of for 4. Buffalo, Cincinnati, Denver, Pittsburgh. That are kind of all in the mix. Things are definitely too early yet to tell in the or anywhere in the NFL, but we're definitely getting into that time of the year, Kyle, where it's playoff fever. Next week, not this week, but next week, we got Saturday football starting again. It is that wonderful time of the year, Kyle Quinn.
Can't wait, man. Hopefully some snow games, and the Eagles' opponents get a little bit easier. We're getting through the gauntlet, man.
Oh, and by the way, unfortunately, Kyle, the 6-0 prediction of the gauntlet is not going to come true, so our bet is now
off. So, God forbid, Matt, they end up going 5-1. I mean,
well, the bet was 6-0. So anyway, Kyle Quinn, it's always a pleasure to talk to you. Before I let you go, where can the good folks out there find you?
Yep, at Kyle_Quinn WIP on Twitter, and then of course 94 WIP every weekday, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. on the midday show.
All right, Kyle, my man. We'll see you next week, and hopefully we're talking Eagles victory and on to Seattle.
Man. Go Birds. Dallas sucks.
Dallas sucks. Good night, Kyle. All right, Kyle Quinn. Man, again, I guess, here's the thing, and we said it, right? A lot of time now has passed between Monday and today, right? The venom is over. That feeling of letdown and despair has ended. The game is over. The Eagles lost. We've moved on. Really, again, not spending too much time talking about Dallas week. And this goes to my narrative, and I'll put this in my little file box there. This Dallas week is just not the way it was. The Eagles are still dealing with kind of what happened on Sunday. Now, again, is it timing? Is the way this thing worked out timing, and then we didn't really have time to really focus on Dallas because we kept lamenting over this game? I don't know, but I'm telling you, in the Dallas weeks of the past, it would have mattered if we would have lost 42-19 or beaten them 42-19. We would have turned the page instantly on Dallas week. It just doesn't feel the same anymore. Dallas week just is not the same, but here we are. Dallas week is upon us. And before I say goodbye, I got to do a couple things because I haven't been diligent at all. Here on the Edge of Philly Sports, don't forget we are sponsored in part by Sherry's Ticket Town for sports, concert, and theater tickets. www.sherrytickets.com. Family owned and operated since 1946. Save an additional 10% when you enter the promo code EOP10. And that's where I get my tickets. And after I get my tickets, I go down to Dolan's, 24 East Sellers Ave in Ridley Park, so I can enjoy some Quizzo, some music, and great times and memorabilia giveaway. Tell PJ and the gang that we sent you, and they'll take great care of you. And then after you leave Dolan's and you're on your way home, if you happen to find yourself, of course, you're not driving home if you've been partaking in some adult beverages, but if you happen to find yourself in a situation where you got a workman's comp problem, a motor vehicle accident, or a personal injury criminal law, Dave Cherry at 610-565-0300 at thecherryinjurylawgroup.com. He is the guy you need to call to handle all your legal needs. And then after that's settled and you get that big settlement from whatever those legal needs are, and the next place you need to go to, my friends, is to PhillySportsTrips.com. Nobody travels or travel like the pros with Philly Sports Trips. They got a bunch of stuff coming up, a bunch of Eagle stuff. I think it's all sold out for the rest of the season or whatever. But, keep looking back. The Philly stuff is all in the works. I don't know why these slides are always blurry, but here's the Philly spring training stuff for the year. And then, of course, this one, February 17th for the Stadium Series down there at MetLife, Flyers Devils, and a trip that I actually might find myself on. So head over to Philly Sports Trips today and see all they have to offer and wrap up your week. It's Saturday here at Edge of Philly Sports. We're going to be doing some birds blasting at noon. Then later on tonight, you got Flyers, not Flyers Penguins. You got Flyers Avalanche. That's a typo. It's Flyers Avalanche. Clear the ice later on tonight. And then tomorrow we got just stacked and covered, stacked, racked, and plaqued for Eagles Cowboy coverage all day long, pre, post, half as well. And then sandwiched in between them, some PM and the AM, and then the all across all the time show there here on EOP. So again, if you're in the Philly sports and you can't find it on EOP, you can't find it. So this brings me to my picks segment. I forgot to give them again on Monday night because I was too amped up, but here I am. It is now Saturday, but I have to tell you, or Saturday, I have to tell you though, I made these picks on Tuesday, so these picks are valid. I got the Eagles, of course, over Dallas this week because I'll never pick the Cowboys for nothing. Last night I took the Pittsburgh Steelers to beat the Patriots. You know what? I have no idea who won that game. I don't have one clue who won that game. Are you serious right now? Let me take a look because I have no idea. How? Let me go through the rest of these. On the Sunday's action, I got Atlanta over Tampa. Give me the Lions over the Bears. Give me the Cleveland Browns over Jacksonville because, of course, they're dealing with the situation with their quarterback. And I got some New Orleans Saints over some Carolina Panthers. And here, I got it right here. Who won last night? The Patriots beat the Steelers 21-18. Oh, well, I'm 0-1. So right off the bat. Then I give me Houston over the Jets. Give me the Baltimore Ravens over the Rams. Give me the Raiders over the Vikings. Give me the San Francisco 49ers to keep the train rolling. They'll beat Seattle, Kansas City over Buffalo, the Chargers over Denver, Miami over Tennessee on the first of two Monday night games this week. The Sunday night game is the Eagles, of course. The first Monday night game is Miami and Tennessee. And then the second Monday night game, both at the same time, Green Bay over the Giants. And there you have my Week 13 picks. There you have it. So that's going to do me tonight. I want to thank Kyle. I want to thank all of our sponsors, and I want to thank you for checking us out. Make sure you're tuned in for the EOP for the rest of the weekend and the rest of the week. I will see you on Monday. We're talking Philly sports with Matty B, and then I will see you again next Saturday with some more Birds Blast with Kyle Quinn. Until then, go Birds and have a great weekend.